I'm just not that sexual. I have a low libido. I'm not really wired that way. Sex just isn't that important to me. If you've ever said something like this about yourself, if you've accepted this as just who you are, I need to ask you a question. Are you actually not sexual, or did you just decide that somewhere along the way? Because there's a really important difference between those two things, and understanding that difference might change everything for you. Hi Angel, welcome back to my YouTube channel. And if you're new here, my name is Ida and I help women awaken their feminine energy, become absolutely magnetic, and have unforgettable intimacy. So if that's your vibe, hit subscribe. And if you want to go deeper with me beyond YouTube, I have courses and programs linked below to go deeper into this work. All right, so let's talk about the story first, because so many women are walking around with a story about themselves that they've never actually questioned. I'm not that sexual. I've never had a high sex drive. I'm just not a very sensual person. Other women seem to want it more than I do. I'm just not wired that way. And these statements can feel like facts. They can feel like fixed truths about who you are, like saying I have brown eyes or I'm 5'6", just the way it is. You've probably had this story for years, maybe even decades. It's become a part of your identity, part of how you understand yourself. And because it feels like a fact, you've stopped questioning it. You've stopped wondering if it could be different. You've accepted it and built your life around it. But here's what I want to offer you today. What if it's not a fact? What if I'm not that sexual isn't a fixed truth about who you are, but a conclusion that you came to at some point in your life, based on your experiences, based on what happened to you, based on what you were taught, and then you just stopped questioning it? What if the story you've been telling yourself is a protection, not an absolute truth? That's a very different thing, and it opens up a very different possibility. Now, before I go any further, I want to say something really important. If you've shut down sexually, there is a reason. You didn't just randomly become disconnected from your sexuality for no reason. Something happened, or many things happened over time. And this shutdown, it was smart, it was protective, it made sense given what you were dealing with. If you've lost access to your sexual aliveness, your system had a reason for closing that door. It was trying to keep you safe. It was trying to protect you from something that felt dangerous or painful or overwhelming. So before we go any further, I want you to know that this isn't your fault and there's nothing wrong with you. But, and this is the important part, just because the shutdown made sense doesn't mean it has to be permanent. Just because it was the right response at one time doesn't mean it's still serving you now. You're allowed to question it. You're allowed to wonder if it could change. So let's talk about why women shut down sexually in the first place, because understanding this might help you understand yourself better. So the first reason is shame. So many women grew up receiving messages that their sexuality was bad or dirty or dangerous or shameful. Maybe it was religious messaging that sex was sinful, that your body was something to be controlled, that desire was a weakness to overcome. Maybe it was purity culture, that your worth was tied to your virginity, that being sexual made you less valuable, that good girls don't want it. Maybe it was more subtle. Maybe it was a mother who was uncomfortable with anything related to bodies, or a father who made you feel ashamed of developing, or a culture that told you sexy women were sluts and respectable women were modest. Whatever the source, the message landed and your system responded by shutting down. Because why would you stay open to something that you've been told is shameful? Now, the second reason is early experiences. Maybe we were shamed for very normal childhood curiosity about your body. Maybe you were sexualized too young before you were ready, before you really understood. Maybe your boundaries were crossed in small ways or maybe even very significant ways. These early experiences teach your system that sexuality isn't safe, that being in your body isn't safe, that it's better to close off than to stay open and vulnerable. Now, the third reason is trauma. And sexual trauma, whether it is very overt or more subtle, can cause really profound shutdown. Your body learns that this part of you is dangerous, that opening up means getting hurt, so it closes to protect you. This is a survival response, and it's brilliant actually. Your system did what it needed to do to get you through something that was too much to process. but the shutdown that protected you back then might be limiting you today. Now, the fourth reason is simply never learning how to actually be in your body. Many women grow up entirely in their heads, thinking, achieving, performing. No one ever taught them how to be embodied, how to feel sensation, how to be present in their physical form. If you've never learned to be in your body, of course you're not going to feel sexually alive. Sexuality lives in the body. If you're not there, you can't access it. The fifth reason is bad sexual experiences. Sex that was painful, sex that was boring, sex that was entirely focused on his pleasure while yours was kind of like an afterthought, sex that felt like an obligation or a performance rather than genuine connection. And if your experience of sex has been that it's not pleasurable for you, why would you want it? Your system learns that sex isn't actually good for you, so desire disappears. The sixth reason is relationship dynamics. So partners who criticized your body or who pressured you, or partners who made sex feel like something you owed them rather than something that you both shared. Partners who never learned how to actually pleasure you. And over time, these dynamics kill desire. Your body stops wanting something that has only brought disconnection or disappointment. And the seventh reason is just pure exhaustion. Being so depleted by life, by work, by kids, by responsibilities, by stress, that there's simply nothing left. No energy for desire, no bandwidth for pleasure. Survival mode doesn't leave room for sexuality. And here's what I want you to see. All of these are responses to something. The shutdown isn't random. It isn't just who you are. It happened for a reason. And that matters because if it's a response, it can shift. If it's a protection that developed, it can soften when it's safe to do so. And here's where it gets interesting. At some point, and you may not even remember when, you made a decision. I guess I'm just not that sexual. It might have been conscious, so after years of not feeling desire or of not enjoying sex or feeling somewhat broken compared to other women, you finally just accepted it, like, this is who I am. Or it might have been unconscious, kind of an inner giving up that happened beneath your awareness, a door that slowly closed until you forgot it had ever even been open. Either way, there was a moment when the shutdown stopped being something that was happening to you and became something you identified as. I'm not sexual became as true to you as your name. And once you made that decision, you stopped questioning. You stopped trying to access that part of yourself. You stopped wondering if it could be different. In some ways, this decision probably felt like relief, like you could stop trying, stop feeling broken, stop comparing yourself to women who seem to want it more. And you just accepted it and moved on. And I understand why you did that. It makes sense. But here's what I want you to consider. It was a decision, not a fact. And if it was a decision, it can be unmade. You can question the story. You can wonder if that's actually true. You can be curious about what might be possible if you stopped accepting the shutdown as permanent. Now, that doesn't mean forcing yourself to be something you're not. It just means being open to the possibility that maybe what you've decided you are is not the full picture. So here's the reframe I want to offer you. Your sexual energy isn't gone. It can't be. Sexual energy is life force energy. It's the energy that creates life itself, literally. It's the energy of desire, of creativity, of aliveness. It's fundamental to being human, to being alive. You can't just not have it. It's literally impossible. So if you don't feel it, that doesn't mean it's missing. It means you've lost access to it. It's been buried, it's been protected, frozen. And there's a huge difference between I don't have sexual energy and I've lost access to my sexual energy. The first is a complete dead end. If you don't have it, there's nothing to do. That's just how it is. The second is a door. If it's buried, it can be unearthed. If access has been lost, it can be found again. I've worked with so many women who came to me absolutely convinced that they weren't sexual, that they'd never had much desire, that they were fundamentally different from women who seem to really enjoy sex. And then they did the work. They healed the shame. They came back into their bodies. They created safety in their nervous system. They reconnected to sensation and pleasure. And they discovered a part of themselves that they didn't know existed. Desire they had never felt before. Pleasure they had never experienced. A sexual aliveness that had been there all along, just buried under years of shutdown. They didn't become someone different. They uncovered who they'd always been underneath all the layers of protection. The woman on the other side of this work often can't believe she ever thought she wasn't sexual, because now that she's met that part of herself, she can't imagine going back to not knowing her. She was never broken. She wasn't not wired that way. She was just disconnected. And those are very, very different things. So here's my invitation to you. I'm not asking you to force anything. I'm not asking you to pretend to feel something you don't feel or push yourself into sexuality before you're ready. I'm asking you to be curious. What if it's not fixed? What if I'm not sexual is a story, not a fact? What if instead of accepting the shutdown as permanent, you ask yourself, what shut me down in the first place? What if you got curious about what it would take to feel safe enough to open again? What if the woman you've decided you are isn't actually the woman you could become? And you don't have to have the answers right now. You just have to be willing to question the story, because somewhere inside of you, there's a part that remembers, a part that knows that there's more, a part that's been waiting for you to wonder if things could be different. And that whisper, that's her. That's the part of you that's been buried. And she's not gone. She's just been waiting for you to come find her. And if you're watching this and something in you is stirring and you're ready to do this deeper work, I want to invite you into my Liberated Woman Program. This is my signature 6-week deep dive program for women who are ready to do this work, to actually go in and reconnect to what's been buried, to thaw what's been frozen, to come home to your body and your pleasure and your sexual aliveness. We work with the shame, with the messages you absorbed that made your sexuality feel dangerous or wrong. We work with the body coming back into sensation, into presence, into actually inhabiting your physical body. We work with pleasure, expanding your capacity to feel pleasure, to receive, to become multi-orgasmic. We work with your relationship to your own desire, awakening what's been dormant, reconnecting to your wanting, remembering what it feels like to be turned on by life itself. This isn't about forcing yourself to be sexual before you're ready. It's about creating the conditions where your natural aliveness can finally emerge, where the shutdown can soften because it's safe to, where you can meet a part of yourself you may have never known. So if that's calling you, if you're ready to question this story and discover what's actually possible on the other side, I'll leave the link below for you to check it out. Now, whether or not you join the program, I want you to take one thing from this video. You are not fixed. The story you've been telling yourself about who you are sexually is just a story, and stories can change. Your sexual aliveness isn't gone forever. She's buried, she's waiting, and she's ready for you to find her whenever you're ready to look. So be curious, angel. Question the story and see what's possible on the other side. I'll see you in the next one.